My name is Olivia. I'm 17 years old, a senior at Cascade Prep, up in the foggy, pine-scented hills of Seattle, Washington. And on a freezing morning, December 11th, 2025, I flatlined for exactly 4 minutes in the sterile silence of the school library after a sudden massive pulmonary embolism. I lived with my grandfather, who had raised me since I was small. He worked the night shift at a local shipyard, his hands perpetually smelling of salt and oil, doing everything he could so I could be the first Reed to go to college. I was quiet, an honor student, a chess club president, the definition of invisible. My life was about algorithms, AP history, and keeping my old man from worrying. God was a concept, a philosophical problem I filed away for a postgraduate elective, a distant idea I hadn't seriously considered since my grandmother passed. I was hunched over a calculus text when my chest seized. 1 second, I was balancing an equation. The next, the world was a blinding, unbearable white pain. The next thing I knew, I was floating. I looked down at the scene. Mrs. Albright, the librarian, was bent over my body, her face a mask of pale terror as she performed frantic, clumsy chest compressions. Someone had called 911. I could hear the faint, distant siren. A few classmates stood paralyzed by the shelves, their phones already out, not to help, but to record. I felt a pang of distant pity, watching their clumsy attempts at life-saving and their detached voyeurism. I wanted to shout, "Stop! I'm right here!" But no sound came. I was present, yet completely unanchored. Then, the emergency lights of the ambulance outside started to dim, and the chaotic noise of the library faded. It wasn't a switch turning off. It was a gentle, irreversible dissolution of the world around me, like a masterpiece slowly losing its color and detail, being wiped clean by an unseen hand. As the last shreds of the library disappeared, all fear vanished, replaced by a quietude so profound it felt like a homecoming. When the fading stopped, I was standing on ground that seemed to breathe light. It wasn't pavement or dirt or grass. It was a shimmering, resilient surface that glowed with a deep, liquid gold. There were no edges, no horizon, no sun, yet the light was everywhere, soft and warm. It was perfect peace. Then, I felt the presence. It was a consciousness that filled the space, a tidal wave of unconditional acceptance. It was the feeling of every perfect moment of my life, watching a sunrise over the Pacific, the pride in my grandfather's eyes, solving a puzzle that had stumped me for days, all compressed into a single, radiant point. It was love, vast and incomprehensible. Then, a voice spoke. It didn't resonate through the air. It resonated through the marrow of my bones. "Olivia," I turned. Standing there was a figure that defied every artistic depiction I'd ever seen. He was young, perhaps in his late 20s, clad in simple, flowing white cloth that seemed to be spun from the same light that filled the space. His hair was dark and flowed over his shoulders, but it was his eyes that held the universe, deep sapphire blue, full of an impossible ancient wisdom and a gentle, immediate tenderness. It was the Christ. "Am I gone?" I managed to whisper, the sound thin and fragile against the vast silence. He smiled, a slight tilt of the head that made me feel entirely seen and known. "You are with me now," he said, his voice a symphony of tranquility that was both powerful and incredibly intimate. "And I have things for you to witness." He held out a hand. When my fingers brushed his, a current of pure, vital energy flowed into me. The weariness of my life, the anxiety about college, the stress of school, the quiet burden of making my grandfather proud, all of it dissolved. I felt whole. Suddenly, the golden ground beneath us became a vast, translucent lens. Below us, I could see the entire planet. Swirling clouds, dark cities, glowing oceans, a living, breathing sphere. "The time approaches," he said, his tone shifting to one of profound gravity, "when I will permit a great stillness to fall upon the earth for 3 days. But before that, I will send my people 3 clear warnings that all may prepare their hearts." As he spoke, the image of the earth began to move, like watching time-lapse footage. The first sign, the harmonic. "The first sign will be a sound," he stated. Just as he finished, it began. It was not a physical noise, no engine roar, no sonic boom. It was a perfectly pitched, resonant hum, a pure, sustained harmonic. It was the sound of everything in creation being perfectly aligned, a cosmic chord struck in the very fabric of existence. It lasted for exactly 7 minutes. I watched the people below. Millions stopped whatever they were doing. Traffic ground to a halt as drivers stared blankly ahead. People in meetings stood up, tears streaming down their faces. This sound will be heard by every soul, from the infant to the aged, regardless of language, Jesus explained. It is my spirit calling them to reconciliation. The sound will expose every hidden rift, every long-held bitterness, every unforgiven slight. It will make the pain of separation unbearable. I saw estranged siblings drop their phones and rush toward one another. I saw neighbors embrace after decades of silence, but I also saw others who tried to fight the feeling, clamping their hands over their ears, running indoors to drown out the inner aching with loud music or futile distraction. They must forgive, Olivia. They must make peace. The soul cannot endure the coming darkness while holding a grudge. The second sign, the veil of ether. The second sign, he continued, and the earth below changed. The daytime scene replaced by the dark hemisphere will be the lights. The night sky was ripped open by a spectacle that made the most brilliant aurora look like a flicker. Great, silent curtains of color, a deep, burning emerald, an electric sapphire, and an intense, luminous bronze began to dance, moving across the entire celestial sphere. They were visible over every country, a constant, silent reminder. These lights will appear for 3 consecutive nights, he revealed. When my children see this veil of ether, they will know the moment is close. It is their final call to gathering and provision. I watched people below. Those who had obeyed the hum were now busy but calm. They were filling bathtubs, gathering candles, and most importantly, calling family home. They were storing not just water, but prayer books, and ensuring the only light in their homes was simple and natural. Others, who had ignored the first sign, were running wildly in the streets, afraid of the strange, beautiful phenomena, and now fighting over supplies they were too late to secure. The third sign, the deep silence. I turned to Jesus, a lump forming in my throat. And the last sign? He looked down at the world, and his face held a deep, compassionate sorrow. The third sign will be the silence. And then, it happened. Not a quietness, but a supernatural cessation of noise. For 1 full hour, the roar of the human world simply stopped. Every electronic device, every car engine, every television, every power grid, and every digital signal went dead. The entire manufactured symphony of human civilization fell mute. For 60 minutes, Jesus said, every machine crafted by human hands will pause. Only the sounds of my own creation, the wind, the flowing water, the cries of the birds, will remain. I watched cities become monoliths of stillness. People spilled out onto the streets, confused, terrified. They held their dead phones, bewildered by the sudden helplessness. But in that moment, in the unshakable stillness, a third, quiet thing happened. They looked at each other. They spoke. They listened. The distraction of the entire modern world was gone, replaced by the necessity of genuine human connection. When the silence ends, Jesus said, his voice firm, my people will have exactly 24 hours before the 3 days of darkness begin. Why the darkness, Lord? I whispered, feeling the cold weight of the prophecy. He knelt, meeting my eyes. Because the modern world has filled every minute with noise. They worship their technology, their distractions, their endless pursuit of more, forgetting the source of all life. For 3 days, I will remove everything they use to hide from me and from one another. In that profound darkness, only the light of a prepared heart will sustain them. He showed me the 3 days, the prepared families, huddled together by candlelight, praying, singing, sharing stories, drawing closer to him and to each other. Their small homes were islands of peace, but I also saw the others, panicking, stumbling in the absolute blackness, their unprepared hearts turning the forced stillness into a terrifying nightmare of isolation and fear. Lord, I pleaded, tears finally breaking free. Why me? I'm just a student. No one will listen. They'll think I had a hallucination. Jesus reached out, gently cupping my cheek. I chose you, Olivia, because your heart is honest. You still search for truth in a world that sells lies. Your duty is not to convince, but to witness. You plant the seed. I provide the rain and the growth. He then showed me a final, agonizing image. My grandfather, leaning heavily on a metal railing in the hospital hallway, his strong frame shaking as he wept. A chaplain speaking to him in low, grave tones about my prognosis. "I don't want to go back," I said, the words torn from me. "This is everything. Please, let me stay in this peace." He stood and pulled me into an embrace that was pure light, pure security. "I know your weariness, little one, but your grandfather needs you, and the world needs your voice to testify to what is coming. Go, tell them what you have seen. How will I find you again? Every time you choose compassion over judgment," he whispered against my hair. "Every time you speak truth when it is easier to be silent. Every time you turn your heart toward me in prayer, I am there. I will be with you until your true time comes." He kissed the top of my head. "Now go. Tell them of the silence. Help them prepare their hearts. Do not be afraid. I am in control of all that is coming." The light intensified, pulling me away, and I fought it, grasping for that perfect peace. Then, a sound cut through the silence, my grandfather's desperate, broken voice. "Eli! Please, son, don't leave me, not like this!" I gasped, a searing, raw breath that hurt my chest. The lights of the emergency room were a violent, blinding shock. The beep of the monitors was a chaotic, insistent drumbeat. A doctor stared at my chest, his mouth slightly open. 37 minutes, he muttered to the nurse, his voice barely audible. "We recorded no electrical activity for 37 minutes. No brain damage. How is this possible?" My grandfather was beside me instantly, gripping my hand so hard it hurt. "Eli, oh God, Eli, you're back." My throat was dry and raw. I struggled to speak past the tube, finally managing a whisper that tasted like ash and light. "Grandpa, I saw him. I saw the signs. The silence is coming." I spent a week in the hospital. The medical staff called it a miraculous anomaly. I called it a mission. That was 6 months ago. Now, I share my story. Some people in the Seattle rain listen intently, their eyes holding that same flicker of recognition my grandfather's did when I told him the full prophecy. Others dismiss me as a troubled kid recovering from trauma, but I remember the 3 signs, the 7-minute harmonic, the 3-night veil of ether, and the 1-hour deep silence, and the promise that follows. The 3 days of darkness are not a punishment. They are an intervention, a forced moment of stillness designed to bring us back to the essentials: faith, family, and forgiveness. It is not too late. Now is the time to start. Not just with candles and water, but with the painful, necessary work of the heart. Mend the broken ties, confess the hidden sins, forgive the unforgivable. When that heavenly sound pierces the air, don't run. Listen, it is not the warning of an end. It is the beginning of the journey home. I died for 4 minutes and came back to tell you this. He is real. His love is real. And the silence is coming. Prepare your heart, because that is the only refuge that will hold.